Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences from some of the greatest coaches in the world. I'm Michael Kurkowski, so grateful for you joining me today. And if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to support the show. All right, let's dive in. Here we go. All right, and we are live. The Carrie Campbell. What's up? How are you, Carrie?
Good. The Carrie Campbell. I'm great.
Welcome back to the show. It's been a while.
It has been a while. Has it? When was the last time? I can't even remember.
We did a couple with UNBG together when we were diving into all of the youth stuff that you guys are doing.
Right. So we were up. That was our first place in Arizona. I've moved twice since then.
Yeah, but I got a memory. I think it was like 2 years ago when we first chatted one-on-one when you came onto the podcast, which was like, I think it was like episode 40 or something like that. And now we're at episode 246. So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a beautiful blessing and a beautiful journey on here. But anyway, I'm always pumped to chat with you. You've taught me so much over the years, you and BG, and I really wanted to have you on because the shit that you're doing right now with the mission that you have is so. You've always been an inspiring person, from either connecting with you in person or speaking, and even the words that you put out on social media. But I really feel like, for me, it seems like even the last few months, you've gone to either another level of the work that you're doing. And that's why I was excited to chat with you on it. So I'm just going to start with really the open-ended question. You are on a mission right now.
Yes.
What is this? What is the mission?
Well, okay, I'm going to tell you what my own personal mission is in order to make my impact mission, because this is a bold statement that I've been making this statement. I don't even know if you've read this, saw this, but I've been making this statement everywhere for about a week and a half. I've been saying it privately, but I've made it public now. So my mission personally is to become the female version of Tony Robbins. Right? Like, and isn't that like this big, bold statement to make? Seriously?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
I just want to be the female Tony Robbins, right? And so the thing is that a lot of people misinterpret that, and they assume that I'm after celebrity status or accolades or the notoriety. It's got nothing to do with that. For me, when I say that I want to be the female Tony Robbins, the reason I want to is because if I have that sort of exposure and reach, it means I'm impacting that many women. Mm-hmm. So that's my vision, is really to impact as many women around the world as I possibly can with my process, with my teachings, with my story, and change and save as many lives of women as I possibly can while I'm here on earth. That's really, that's the big mission, right? Worldwide change, global change, for women everywhere.
Yeah. I love that. But it's making a bold, yeah. Well, it is. It's interesting. You hear a name like that, which is, Tony Robbins as a brand name right there. And so many people can say that and easily misconstrue that as the status aspect of it, but the word that you use a lot in there is the impact. And I think that's a powerful word, to use on that, and impacting on the amount of people that you connect with. And I think even if Tony Robbins was here right now, he'd probably say the same thing. Like, the celebrity and the accolades of stuff like that, they come without thinking of that, because that's like, that's, if you want to be a persona, that's one thing. But if you want to be the person that's making the impact, I think it's a very different thing, and it's a very different approach.
Yeah. It's really interesting, right? Because, not to take this down a business conversation, but I'm sure you have a lot of different people who listen to your podcast, right? So I hope everybody gets something out of this. But like, from a business standpoint, right? Because obviously I have a business, right? From a business standpoint, what I've been sharing a lot with people recently is that I couldn't have been here at the beginning. I couldn't have been here at the beginning. So like, obviously we'll dive more into it, but like, the Unstoppable Woman Project and Her-dentity and everything that I'm doing right now over there, Unstoppable's been around. This is our 5th year, but I couldn't have business planned where I'm at now 5 years ago, because I had to grow into it. I had to build the program. I had to feel the program. I had to watch the impact. So, it's like, I wish I could give that lesson to everybody who's building a business, because we try to like forecast so far ahead. What you got to have is, you got to have this like locked vision and you got to just keep moving towards it. And for me, my vision has always been impact. I cannot build around income. Like,
Mhm.
don't get me wrong, income's going to flow, but I cannot build around income metrics because that's not something that inspires me. But I will boldly state everywhere right now, no, I'm going to be the female Tony Robbins
Mhm.
because you need me. You need, and I could say that because it's driving from that impact place. And I couldn't have done that 5 years ago
Mhm.
or even like 3 years ago. I had to become everything that I am now to be able to get to that place.
So we're going to dive into some of the details of the Unstoppable Women's Tour and Her-dentity. I want to get into that. But what you just said right there is really interesting because even 5 years ago, you're already a 20-year veteran of doing this. You've been very successful on this stuff. So to hear that you needed to grow in this time right here, my question of that is, why not 5 years? What's changed so much in your world
Yeah.
and what you can do now over these last few years that now that bold statement's not just something that's out there in the ether, but something that you really want that you're going to manifest and really make happen.
That's a really good question. So really I think that it's like it's a continual evolution, right? Like it's I have journeyed through so many ups and downs and in betweens in my life. So I believe that there's just been a continual evolution. But if I were to look like 5 years to now, I just I'm not the same person I was because I've had to grow through some serious challenge. Some serious stuff that, my daughter's gone through, some really intense challenge and trauma
Mhm.
I have had to grow through. And during those years, it's particularly the last 3 years. So let me give a little bit of backdrop here. Unstoppable's been around for 5 years. I In 2021, I paused the growth of it to work with my daughter who was going through some extreme trauma. So I paused it in order to take care of her. I never stopped serving my clients who were inside of Unstoppable. But it's the one thing for me that never wobbled in those years. So it's been around as a foundation. And now I'm like, okay, ready to go. And I think who I had to become to do what I did with my daughter, to manage life, I mean, not obviously people don't know this, but during these really hard years, I became a professional athlete as a fitness competitor. I won my pro status. I won my title of Miss Fitness USA 35 plus. Like I did all of these things during these really tumultuous times. And so my own personal life goals are happiness, impact, and mastery. And those are my compass that like really drive me forward when I am going through challenging times. And so I have to face that head on and say, okay, like, how can I master this? How can I grow through this? So the last 3 years have just been this immense, immense growing opportunity and mastery. And so who I had to become in the last 3 years is like such an elevated version of myself that now I feel like I can't say like I woke up one day and was like, oh, I'm going to decide to do this. I just kept pursuing my life goals. And by pursuing those life goals, I found myself here, right? Because I've had to practice, I practice what I teach, and I've had to practice it hard in the last
Mhm.
3 years. I've had to lose myself and refine myself in the last year, like it. And now I'm like taking that and like, okay, you know what? And quite honestly, I think as arrogant as it sounds, I think you're fucking hard pressed to find someone who can do what I do better than me.
Yeah.
Like I actually believe that. I'm a little bit arrogant right now. But like it's like you get to that point where you're just like, I know human beings, I know human behavior. I've been doing this for 25 years. And I can stand behind with such authority what I do and claim that status now. And I
Yeah.
think you have to evolve to that place. And it just so happens that where I'm at now is because of the last couple of years. You have to allow the maturation of expert to happen.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's a great quote of like, I don't have belief, I have evidence. It's like, I
Right.
think it's an interesting,
Right.
like, belief is very powerful and you need to have that self-belief. But when you connect that with action and then start to create evidence of what you've done before and
Yeah.
look back on that, then it's different than belief. I think, faith is very powerful on there, but the next step of faith through works and actions is actually to show, yeah, no, I've done some crazy shit. So I don't
Yeah.
see it as arrogant I mean, there's always a line between arrogance and confidence. And I think it's
Yeah.
probably how much somebody's connected with you before and sees the authenticity
Right.
of your
Yeah.
message.
Yeah.
But during that during that growth, you said that, the Unstoppable Women's was always around, even though you had to pause on some things, to take care of, some personal things and family, but it was always around in that.
Yeah.
When elaborate on that a little bit for me, like, was it you always thought this was going to be something bigger, or you knew that this was going to be an impact, even if you couldn't put everything
Yeah.
you had in at the moment? What was
That's
it
a
that
great
was
question.
still holding on at that moment that you realized this is
Um,
going to come down the line?
That's a really, really great question. The answer is actually pretty simple. It's effortless for me. Serving women and coaching women is effortless. So, there was a period of time during all of this that I was like, the Unstoppable Woman Project had 5 coaching calls a week. And you would think when you're going through a really hard time, that's a lot. It was effortless for me. So I define coaching for me as a selfish reciprocity, right? It's a term I coined. In by me coaching and leading women, it's actually filling my cup back up as well. So it's a selfish reciprocity, like I'm giving out, but reciprocally it's coming back to me. And Unstoppable has always been effortless to me. And then the other part of it is, my mantra inside of Unstoppable is no woman gets left behind. Like my CEO almost like died when I told him I wanted to turn my annual membership to $600 from 4,000. He literally was like, "What? What do you want to do?" Like, wow. But for me, like I've been a woman through everything, right? I've been in abusive situations. I have been rock bottom. I have been broke. I have been a single mom who didn't know, do I put gas in the car or food on the table on a given day? So like I've been there, and I'm just a small town girl, right? Like this is how I started my Her-dentity. I said to everybody, I was like, I'm up here looking all prim and proper. I'm like, but what you need to know is I'm just a small town girl who carried frogs in her pockets, and my bodysuit is riding up my ass right now. So like I'm like, and like so for me, like I never want to lose touch with where I was, because that's how I can give to others. And for me, giving back to women is so important for me. Like I want to give them the tools to not have to suffer. So Unstoppable stayed consistent because of its effortless nature and the impact driver that I have to make this difference in women's lives. And and I knew I was going to go somewhere with it, somewhere big. I just didn't know when, and I didn't know what it was going to look like. I had no idea. Where I am right now, I had no ideas where I was going to be 5 years ago. I started Unstoppable as like a, maybe I'll give this a try and see what if it has legs and it sticks. And
Hmm.
it's gone through 25 different iterations in the last 5 years. But that's the reason it stuck, because
Yeah.
it's my impact and the effortless nature of it.
That's really interesting. You use the word effortless on there because I know in logical sense there is some effort that you put behind it to do it, but you said it feels effortless. What actually is that feeling? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Okay. So this is something I've been talking about a lot lately. It lights my soul on fire. Like it does. Like, and I'm getting emotional right now. And this is the first podcast I've done about this, right? Her-dentity and where I'm at. So like this is like the first time I've talked about this like this. Um Impact and helping people lights my soul on fire. It gets dampened when we have to start talking metrics and numbers and blah blah. Now I know that's a part of business, right?
Yeah.
But it like I knew every time I had people trying to tweak Unstoppable and we're gonna make it like a $5,000, blah 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 blah. Every time, like I just felt myself go diminish, and then I'd be like, you know what, go away. Let
Mm.
me do it my way, right? And I kept coming back to doing it my way. And yeah, I mean, there's so much effort in it right now, especially right now, like I'm building this live tour. I'm doing it all like bootstrapped. I'm doing it all private message. Like there's a lot involved, but it lights my soul on fire. And that's the effortless nature. Like it doesn't matter if I'm tired, it doesn't matter if I'm, sore, if I have a headache or whatever. Like where I'm going with this is in my belly.
Mm.
right? It's in my, like, it's in my belly, and that's what I'm building.
That's such a it's a great
So excited.
I know it is, and I can feel it right here, through the call. I wanted to ask that because I think it's interesting. It's something that people should take account to their feeling more of that effortlessness. It's like you're doing the work, but it's actually refeeding you at the same time. It's like there's a story about Steffi Graf, the old tennis player, where I forget the scale of it, but it was like there's one scale that talks about how much effort you put in, but the other scale is about how much fun and enjoyment you having it. And she was a 10 out of 10 on both of them working on tennis. So not only was she training as much or more than everybody else, but actually didn't feel like work to her. So
Yeah,
they're like,
yeah,
you can't beat her. She's going to
it's
win because she's going to do
exactly.
more than you, and it's not going to feel like work.
And this is what I'm like, this is actually what I've been talking, like, I know, like, I'm kind of shaking some women up as I'm talking about this, because I'm like, yo, if you're not doing so, it doesn't have to be your business, but if you're not doing something every day that is a part of something that lights your soul on fire, we got to talk.
Yeah.
Like, you can't live life like that. You can't, right? And if it doesn't light your soul on fire, at the core of it, it doesn't mean like you're like, I'm never one of those people like every single moment's a fuck yes moment, right?
Right.
Like, no, it's not, right? Like there just isn't. But if I come back to it and that's my why. So if, like, we're really gonna go, like, big on this one, you gotta know your why. Like,
Mm.
why are you doing what you're doing? And I was just talking to one of my professional athletes the other week about this, and it totally messed him up, man. Because I'm like, why are you playing the game? Like, why? I'm like, because it's not to win a championship. Like, why? And he sits back in his chair and he's like, yo, he goes, you just fucked me up. Because, like, that's a question that nobody asks themselves. So my why, which equates to my core values in life, which equates to my goals, my are what I said before: happiness, impact, and mastery. Like, I am, those are, that is what I'm pursuing. Impact is like a life goal. When I die, I want to leave a legacy in the way that I've changed the world.
Mm.
And, like, people say that, but I don't think they do enough deep diving to really understand what that means.
Mm.
Right. So people, I think, they need to do a little bit of assessing, like, is what you're doing in this world lighting your soul on fire? And if not, it's not saying that it's not your thing, but what is clouding your mindset that's making it that it's not igniting you anymore?
Yeah.
Right? It's a big, huge question. It's like a big, huge rabbit hole question.
Why do you think that is so much that people don't understand their why? I think it's a big question, but you can use it in a couple different ideas. Like, is it don't really know how the process of that even goes? Like, are they just so busy or they
Yeah.
put themselves on the back burner so much? I know specifically like connecting with women, I believe you taught me the stat like 73% of women don't put themselves first. I mean,
Yeah.
that's got to be a huge portion of that, but we
100%.
it's a big phrase that we use a lot of like find your why. You have Simon
Yeah.
Sinek's book that, popularized and stuff. But
Yeah.
actually the process of going through that and individualizing it yourself, it
Yeah.
seems like so many people have no idea either how the fuck to even start or get
100%.
lost on the process. Why do you think that
Yeah.
is so much?
Yeah, I mean, I think we got to go, like, way back to systemically looking at our education system. And that's, I'm going to go that, like, way back then. We're never taught. We were never taught. We're not taught. We're not taught how to be human. We're taught how to be robots. We're taught numbers and details and data. And we're taught history, science, math. And I'm not saying that those things, like, for everybody, like, well, we need to learn those things. I'm not saying we don't need to learn those things. But if we go back to our childhood and our upbringing, we're taught nothing about emotional intelligence. Nothing, right? I mean, if we're lucky, we might get those, like, little, like, cards that show a happy face, a sad face, right?
Right. Mhm.
Like, that's the degree of, like, what does this emotion mean? So, and this is one of the reasons that, like, it's actually something I use when I'm teaching women who are, like, so disappointed in themselves for, how am I stuck? How am I so lost? How is it I don't know myself? Because you've never been taught. You've never been taught. So it's really awesome to spew the rhetoric. You got to know yourself or find your why.
Right.
But the practice of that is so involved. It is a lifetime commitment. And that's the part that I think we've never been taught, and then therefore the idea of a lifetime commitment to knowing yourself is overwhelming. It's overwhelming, and we don't know how. And it's one of the things, I was just in Park City with one of my private clients this weekend, and I was telling her all about this whole Tony, and she's like, well, she goes, I think you're better than Tony Robbins. Anyways, she was like, she goes, because you have a process. But I actually do. It's one of the things she was saying to me, like, you have a process and the step by step. Like, I don't just teach people, you got to go create core values. These are mine. I actually break it down into, this is how you build your core values, right? Everything that I do not teach anything unless I have a practical process to back it up. Because otherwise I'm just the person out there saying, go find yourself. You need to know yourself, right? I think we need to look at personal development far more as a skill than anything else. And it's easy, like when I say a skill, it means if you have a skill, you have to have steps. And if you don't have steps, you're not teaching someone a skill. You're sharing with them an idea. And so that's why I think people are so lost in that regard. They don't know how. They've never been taught ever in this
Yeah.
lifetime. Like, we have to go figure it out ourselves.
Yeah. It is. I think it's a challenge between the contradiction between finding steps, like in borrowing steps from something else, and then
Right.
finding your own way. It's kind of like the Taoism versus Confucianism kind of battle of like, no, you need to have coordinates and you need to borrow those, and the other one is more free flowing. And I think some
Yeah.
people can align more like, oh, I'm finding my own way. But if you don't have coordinates and you don't have steps and build a
Right.
process of it, it's
Yeah.
kind of like you're just, yeah, if you want to get across the country, but you have no GPS, you're just driving, you're
Right.
moving, but you
You
have
might get
no
there
idea.
eventually.
But exactly, no, exactly. Well, I've what's the Yogi Bear line? We're lost, but we're making great time. It's
Right, right, right.
basically
And it's one of the things that, like, I mean, you've heard me say this before because I've taught this so many times. Like, what I do, the Eliminate Your Limits system, which is the foundation for everything I do that, Brian and I created. Um, it's a blueprint. It's not a blueprint. It's a roadmap, right? So I always like, there's not one way to run our system. There are multiple ways to run it. And it's one of the reasons I think actually that the time is nigh for me right now is I have done a lot of private coaching over the last 5 years with a variety of different people from different demographics, with different problems. So I've had to take and pivot and tweak our system so many times that, like, I always tell, like, it's what I tell my women on Unstoppable. Like, they're like, oh, well, I'm having a really hard time journaling, or, and they'll tell me like 8 weeks later. And I'm like, come to the call.
Mhm.
Tell me what you're struggling with, because I'll tweak it. I'll pivot it. I'll adapt it. Like, I know our system, like, upside down, backwards, inside out. Because of that, it's not a blueprint. It is coordinates. It is like, we have this, we have this, we have this, we have this, and all of them can be shuffled around. All of them can be adapted. And I think that people need to, like, if you don't have something to adapt, you don't know how to adapt, right? Or
Mhm.
you don't adapt at all. So yeah, so I just want to add that.
Yeah. So now the process, you've had Unstoppable for 5 years, and now Her-dentity is really the next step. And you're currently on tour right now. I know you did the first one in Montreal,
Yes.
and now going to Phoenix, which is the next one. How
Yeah.
did how did this process for you kind of evolve? Like now you had the Unstoppable Women's Program, and now bringing it into on tour into Her-dentity.
Yeah.
What was this process like for you of shifting? Because I know a lot of things changed with you over this time. Like,
Yeah.
you're a professional athlete. You kind of, I assume, like had to put a little bit of less focus on that to put
Yeah.
this in. What was this process like for you?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to talk. I'm going to share it all. Okay.
Please.
So yeah, I have decided to, not to compete until 2025. So I have tabled, competing. I'm still training like an athlete. I train twice a day. I'm doing all the things with a little bit less focus and just taking it off the competing off the table. But so let me back it up probably to the end of last year, to the end of December. We always have lots of things that we're building in business, Brian and I, my husband and I, for those who don't know. And at the end of last year, we did have to make a conscious decision to pause LE, which was our youth-based program, because we had a few too many oars in the water, right? We had a few too many oars in the water, and there was a lot of different reasons for that. So at the end of last year, I just like I found myself reflecting on, what do I want for me? Like, what do I want? And I decided that unstoppable was it for like, that's it. I'm not doing it, like nothing else. So I literally got on a call with our CEO and Brian. And I was like, okay, guys, I'm like, just so you know, going into 2024, I'm like, I'm building unstoppable and nothing else. That's literally what I said to them.
Okay.
I had just watched Yellowstone and I was channeling my inner Beth.
Um,
So Beth is kind of my like, she is my like my vision in business right now, not as a coach, but as a
the
business
spirit
leader.
animal, Beth Dutton.
I am
Yep.
like, I'm channeling my Beth. Like I am being ruthless in business this year. I'm going here. And if you're not on this pathway, go away.
Mhm.
Like I'm not like, so I have said no to so many things that have come my way. If it's not in alignment with unstoppable, which also includes her-dentity, I don't want to talk about it. Like you can talk to me about it, but I'm not getting involved in it. So the very first thing I did was I got clear. See, even as I'm talking, I'm giving people a practical process, right? I got clear. That was
Like
my
it.
first step. I got clear on what I wanted, right? And then from that point, I started asking myself, like, what do I want to do inside of Unstoppable, right? And I had the baseline, like retreats, like 2-day immersive experiences, my annual membership in an elite mastermind. So I had my framework, right? Now, anybody in business knows the idea is the easy part, the execution
Mhm.
is the part where it's like, oh my God. So it's all unfolding and happening, just not really the way that we anticipated it, but it's turned into something even better. Because when I started this at the beginning of January, I didn't even have this vision of this whole female Tony Robbins thing. That was like over here. So, on this like roadmap of Unstoppable, I had my annual membership, I had retreats, I had this, I had this. And I'll be honest, like we got a little bit too metric based. How many did I need to sell of this? How many did I need to sell of this? How many did I need? And it was killing me. Like it was killing me. And people are like, oh, you're not very comfortable with your product, or you have a money story. I'm like, nah, I got no money story.
Right.
Like I charge people lots of
Yeah.
money.
Mhm.
I have no problem asking for money. And it was just the alignment of my driver was off because it wasn't my driver, it was my Google spreadsheets driver.
Mhm.
So that's kind of like, so that happened. Okay. And I'm going to piece these all together. The second piece that happened was from January till March of this year, I was probably in one of the darkest places I've been in 15 years. Full disclosure. My best friend said to me, like, I didn't know how to pull you out of it. Like, it was bad, bad. And only for the reason that I'd spent 3 years so focused on some really big family stuff that we had been working through with our daughter, um very much by choice. But in those 3 years, I was exhausted. Like it's the best way for me to describe after I competed at Worlds last year, my body just said no, stop. And I had to like stop training for 3 months. Like it was bad. And January through till beginning of March, it was just a dark time for me. Like my get up and go was gone. Like I just, like it was dark is the best way I can describe it, right? And so I had to scratch and claw my way back up to me. And if you watch me on social media, which obviously you do, you've seen the transformation. My hair's back to blonde, it's short. Like I have gone back through my transformation, right? So I was going through my own identity shift, which I do unconsciously. I've been doing this my whole life, because I knew that I had to come out of survival mode and I had to come back into thriving, which is a huge thing I teach. You can't stay in survival mode. So I had this window of time right before I came out of survival mode where I crashed, and I had one of two choices. I'm going to grow or I'm going to stay here. And so I grew into it, right? So as that was happening concurrently, I hosted this retreat for women, in my Unstoppable retreat. And it was a really interesting thing that happened. So I'm painting the whole story here. I hope it's okay.
I love it.
I was at this retreat, and I always start my retreats the same way. I always say to women, I'm like, what are you here for? What is your expectation? What do you want? That's how I open the retreat. And every single woman in the room, there was this theme of like, I don't know who I am. Like, I don't know, I'm lost. Like, what happened? So on a dime, I decided to pivot the entire retreat from what it was supposed to be to identity clarification. So we went into, you know, the language, found nature, free nature, avatars, right? So we went into all this identity stuff. And as the retreat unfolded, it's so interesting the way that the world works, right? Because I was going through my own shift at the same time that all these women needed it. So we all kind of went through it together, right? Like it was this beautiful process, but I watched these women literally transform before my eyes. And I realized, and one of them even went home, and her husband was saying to someone else, like, you know, she went on this retreat. I don't know what happened to her, but she came home a different person. Like, that's insane, right? So as this retreat was unfolding, in the back of my mind, I knew I had my first live event date coming up. Like, I knew it was there, and I had pushed it out, but I had pushed it out, like the message that I was saying, that I was like, what I said I was doing at this live event, it wasn't resonating with me. Like, there was something that wasn't hitting the mark, right, in terms of what I was doing. But I just kind of let it go. I'm like, you know what, just leave it be. I'm going to find the answer. And this was all happening concurrently at the same time on this retreat. And then I'm driving into town one day to go train, and it hits me that, like, this, my 2-day event needs to be about identity. It needs to be about women finding themselves, because then it's like, it's not so much what we do in Unstoppable, it's a complement to Unstoppable. It's something that they're not even we don't do this in Unstoppable, right? We support it on the back end, but it's not something we dive completely into. So as I'm driving to the store, or to the gym, I start playing with this, like, identity. Like, that's what, like, I'm like, this is what it needs to be. Like, this is what it needs to be. And I'm like, okay, I need to call it like the identity code. And I Googled that, and that's taken. I'm like, okay, so it's not the identity code. Okay. And then she identity, her, I'm like, oh my gosh, her-dentity. Like, I'm like, and so her-dentity was born
Mhm.
driving on a back road in North Carolina through the mountains with cows and donkeys. Literally, this is where it was born, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, her-dentity. This is it. And you know, like, and it just rolled from there. I was like, because you know, you go to these events like Rise, UPW, right?
Right.
I went to Rise. It all of a sudden took form into this whole experience. Like, I went to her-dentity. You know, I came, I saw, I grew. Like, all of it started to unfold in front of me. The copy, like, I wrote the copy the next morning. Boom, it came out of me. I created the her-dentity code, which essentially is my 4-step process to identity shifting, so that, you know, you can walk through a her-dentity shift. That everything just flowed out of it, right?
Mhm.
So her-dentity was born from this weekend experience, watching these women go through what they were going through, me having just gone through it as well. And, like, that's where her-dentity was born. So Unstoppable is really the umbrella. And then, you know, I'll have her-dentity retreats, like, all those things are going to still happen. But then I launch out this one in Montreal, right? And I'm like, I'm going home to my hometown, which was so intentional, because in March I was at home by myself for 2 days in Montreal, and I remembered who I was. That's, like, I remembered who I was. And that's what got me out of that dark spot, was that feeling of, like, that's where I found myself the first time after I had left my ex-husband. So I remembered who I was, and I carried that energy in, and I knew I had to do the first her-dentity in Montreal. I knew I had to do it. And as it unfolded, it was just rolling, and like, I'm like, okay, this is not like, I'm like, so let me give this backdrop story. I know I'm talking a lot, but this is, like, so
Please
exciting for
keep
me, and I
going.
haven't
Yeah.
had the
Yeah.
chance
I'm
to
just
tell
sitting
this whole
back here. Yeah.
story.
This is beautiful.
So you know, I push out her-dentity, and originally it was a $550 event. And I'm getting all these women who are like, I really, really want to come, but, like, I can't afford it. And, you know, my kid's this and my kid's that. And so I'm like, okay, I'm like, I'm thinking. So thank God my CEO loves me. I get on a call with him one day. I'm like, okay, I go, I have an idea. I said, I'm going to Montreal anyways. I'm going because I was going for a little bit of a getaway. I'm going anyways. I'm doing this event no matter what. I'm like, I want to make it free. And I'm like, hear me out. Hear me out. I said to my CEO, I'm going to do it. This is what I'm going to do. Come now, pay later if you want. If you want to, I'm going to invest in women so they don't have to invest in themselves except for time and energy. Because I know enough about marketing and business to understand that you got to know, trust, and like someone. And I know that women, 73% of them don't list themselves as their first priority. Not only that, but investing in themselves personally. It's one thing to invest in a business program. It's a different thing to invest in finances towards personal development, right? So now I'm like, I'm going to get rid of the barrier. I'm going to just like wipe this barrier clean, right? So I'm like, this is what I'm doing. So my CEO said to me, he goes, Carrie, he goes, I learned everything I ever needed to know about you in business when I sent you your website. He goes, the emotion that you had when I sent you that website, I realized this wasn't a business, this was a dream. And he goes, so you don't have to ask permission. You're never going to have to ask for forgiveness. He goes, all you need to do is tell me what you need, and I got it for you. And I was like, so he goes, gloves are off, go, just go, right? Go do your thing. So I rent this beautiful hotel room, like conference room overlooking the city, being mindful of budget. And I decide on the way as I'm doing this, like 3 days before the event, half this stuff wasn't done, right? I'm like, this has got to feel like a 2,000 person event. This can't feel like a free event. I don't want it to be a dingy little hotel room, conference room that's gross, right? So we have black tablecloth and centerpieces and beautiful chairs. And if you've seen the picture, yes, I matched the chairs. And yes, that's going to be a thing. We had workbooks and binders, and we did a release ceremony. We had music. I was standing on stage, the female Tony Robbins. And that was like the moment that seized everything for me. Like, I'm like, this is it. This is what we're doing. The event was a huge success. Not only the people who showed up, but I accomplished what I wanted, which was the women who weren't a part of Unstoppable joined the program. And so, like, if we're talking business wise, there was, business wise, it worked, right? And so I hate talking stuff like that, but business wise, it worked. So my CEO didn't think I was absolutely crazy. And he said to me, I got off that weekend, and he said to me, he goes, keep going, keep it free, keep going, just go. So that is the evolution of that. And I was like, I need to be in front of women. I need to make women feel safe. I need women to feel my authenticity. And we're in such a saturated world right now of coaching. Like, everybody and their mother is a mindset coach right now, and everybody's trying to sell stuff all over social media, and the algorithms are pushing you down. And I'm like, I'm doing, like, this is a problem on social media right now if you're trying to build a business. So I'm like, I'm coming off social media. I mean, I'm still there,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I need to be in front of women. I need to be in front of women. So that's how Her-dentity was born into Unstoppable. And where we're going next is, I can get into that afterwards, but that's how it was all born. It was born. And this is for me, like, if, I tell people, like, if you're trying to impact the world and you're sitting down writing a business plan, you've got it backwards. It was all built in motion. It was all built in growing and doing and trying and failing and seeing, and like, this is not what I want. This doesn't feel good. I need to try something different. And now, like, I am just like on fire with this. You can't stop me. And that's the reason I'm like, if you're in my way, get out, because
Yeah.
Ruth is going to like knock you out, right? Or Beth is going to knock you
Yeah.
out. So anyway, so that's how Her-dentity was born. That's Unstoppable. That's where we are. Yeah.
Yeah. There's so much in there I want to pull from. The one that hit me was, and I think a lot of people are in this position, I've been in this a lot, is when you're doing so many, you've committed resources, you've committed energy to one thing or multiple things, and you're trying to make it work. And then you realize that you want to pivot, but it's a really challenging thing to pivot. And I bring it up because I know how much time and effort was put into Ellie at the time, all the other work that you guys have done. The thing I love about you is you don't do anything half-assed, like you go full force into it. So to be able to pivot and adjust, it's not just a change in energy or focus, it's probably also a big change in identity, of what you're doing.
It
And
completely. Yes.
yeah, so that in that process, like I know, the meeting with the CEO, I'm sure connecting with Brian on this and like, bringing this out, and you probably thought through this a lot from here, but was that a challenge for you of like saying, "Oh, I'm going to put all my effort into this, but wait, I have these things that I'm doing before and I don't want to just put them to the side because I've already committed this time." I think that's where we can get a lot of
Yeah.
strife or overthinking these processes a lot. It's because we're holding on to things before and hoping that they work out, even if it's
Yeah.
maybe not really aligned with what we do. Did you have any of that?
So, okay, that's a really good question. And yes, but not in the way the way that one might think. So let me explain that. Um, because I'm so clear on my goals in life, happiness, impact, and mastery, right? It was really easy for me to make the decision to pull back, right? And because of my level of self-awareness,
Yeah.
like I knew that if we kept going the way we were going, we weren't going to be able to have the impact I wanted to have in the world. Like I knew that. And that made it an easy answer.
Okay.
It made it an easy answer. And the accumulation as well of like the 3 years of my exhaustion and my fatigue. And I'm like it all just kind of like I literally, it was a lot of weeks of musing, not an overthinker, but it was a lot of weeks of musing on what do I want, where do I want to go, what do I want to feel, blah blah blah, before I got onto that call and was like, guys, this is it, this is what I'm doing, right? And even like in the past, as a people pleaser, I probably would have had some fear of even announcing that to the guys, but like who I had become over the last 3 years was like taking no enemies, like I'm going, right?
Hmm.
So that was not challenging for me. Where it was challenging actually though was shifting my identity as an athlete. That was the hard part. That was actually really, really not hard as much as it was like it was an odd space to be in. So for not everybody knows this obviously, but my goals are to become a world champion as a fitness competitor, right? And so I'm on trend for that. And for the last 5 years, really eight, but more particularly five, I've really been all in as an athlete, like all in as an athlete. And I actually had already consciously known that I needed to shift. If I wanted to build what I was going to build in business, I needed to shift my athletics a little bit because I couldn't have these two max lifts. So I knew that consciously. But it was really interesting because as Her-dentity started and coming off of I attended an event, a summit for no women back in April. I think it was April, but I attended in March. I attended this event, and as I was at this event, I started to realize that like the best way I could describe it was like I was starting to identify with like I want to be a businesswoman who lunches. Like I want to be able to meet up with these women and go have a glass of wine, go and have a coffee and not have to be so diligent in my mind. And it's not that I couldn't be because I've prepped for competition so many times on the road. One time I was 69 days on the road out of like 80 when I was prepping. So I know how to do it, but I didn't want to. And that was a challenge for me. The challenge for me, I was like, world champion athlete is my identity, but I also want to be this businesswoman who lunches. And I'm like, okay, I feel like the businesswoman who lunches is who I need to be right now. Am I letting myself down though? If I kind of decide to table being a world champion athlete right now, am I disappointing myself? Like it's this very like I'm not the type of person who has external stories about what other people are going to think, but in my own mind, it was like, am I lying to myself? Am I fooling myself? Am I disappointing myself? Am I trying to convince myself of this just because I don't want to be as diligent? And it probably took me 8 weeks to move through that. It
Hmm.
literally probably took me 8 weeks to move through that. And what I actually had to do was recreate a completely new identity and avatar and release, literally say, right now, I'm not a world champion athlete. I had to make, and that was hard. That
Mm.
was hard because I do identify as that so wholly. And it was like, you sometimes like just because you can doesn't mean you have to,
Right. Yeah.
and like just because I could doesn't mean I have to be a perfect athlete right now.
Mhm.
And I know I made the right decision because of the energy that I'm gaining and the momentum I'm gaining, but that was hard. That
Yeah.
was really hard for me.
Yeah, I could see because it's not really just even a mental aspect. You're actually adding the physical side of it too, with the change, which I can totally understand that. So
Yes, yeah.
I want to ask you about um, you you're traveling all over the place. You've got a lot of things that you're working on at all times,
Mhm.
yet still always managing your self-care and everything of juggling things. And I think so many people struggle with finding their non-negotiables and like what are the things that they hold on to. Like with all the work that you're doing and like right now you're in the city, you're traveling all over the place. Are there specific non-negotiables that you hold for yourself to make sure that
Yeah,
your mind is right, your body is still right, and you're still
great
moving
question.
in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was actually really funny. I was telling Brian last night. I was like, I'm going out to run an errand. He's like, that's so weird. You're going to run an errand in a different city. But I travel so much that I'm used like I travel so much that I really am adapted to traveling and I don't really think about it, right? But there are. So my I have absolute non-negotiables that no matter what they happen. So the two non-negotiables that happen no matter what is every single morning I set my day with intentions and every single evening I count my wins. That's like those are my absolute bookends no matter what. I mean, sometimes, there's little, sometimes not consistency doesn't mean perfect, right? So
Sure,
sometimes
timing.
there's
Mhm.
some variance, but those are my bookends. Now, on top of that, because I would say that these are my non-negotiables, but sometimes there's different things that they change them up. But these are, I would say, probably 95% of the time. My morning routine is solid no matter where I am. So no matter where I am, I still travel with my body weight scale, even though I'm not competing next year because I'm still an athlete. I'm just not training to be a world champion athlete right now. So every single morning I wake up, I go pee, I hop on the scale, I check my weight, I check in with my coach. And then from there, I go into my cardio every single morning. So sometimes where I am, the cardio adapts. Like, for example, I'm in New York City right now, so I'm not going to go run on a treadmill. I'm going to go run by the Hudson because it's beautiful, right? But I get up, I get out, I move. So that is like it happens every single day. My intentions come immediately after that, right? So that is my morning. It doesn't matter where I am, it doesn't matter what time zone it is, it doesn't matter what time I wake up. I condition myself to have enough time to do that in order to execute it. And even if I'm not doing cardio, like this morning is my day off training in the morning. So, but I still got up and got out right away. Like I get up, I get out. I don't lounge in bed. I get up, I get out. So that's a huge one for me. The other non-negotiables while I'm on the road is, I mean, it sounds so simple, but water is an absolute like must. I try as best I can to keep my sleep as consistent as I can. Sometimes that's not always easy, but I always try for like I'm a big sleeper, so like 7 to 8 hours minimum is what I target no matter what. And then probably the other non-negotiable, this is like a non-negotiable for me traveling, but everywhere is like I'm really I step into my identity every day,
Mhm.
right? So what does that mean for me? Like, I do my hair, I do my makeup, I get dressed in clothes that make me feel good. I drink my water. Like that identity for me is that happens no matter where I am in the world. Right. So you won't see me. I mean, you might see me first thing in the morning walking down the street, like half asleep, but you won't catch me out and about, not put together. And and it's so hard to get this message across to people. It has nothing to do with the world around me.
Right.
I could give two shits if you see me with my hair up to here, my eye makeup. I don't care. It's about me and the energy I'm putting out.
Mhm.
So if I were to recap those, my morning intentions and my evening wins, my get up and move every single morning, and then my put step into myself every day. I
Yeah.
do that all the time. So yeah,
I
those would
love
be
it.
the ones that I keep tight.
Yeah. I love it. I can attest to intentions and wins at the end of the day, bookending your day is one of the most
So
impactful things that you can do, regardless of any goal that you have. Just if you are a human being, to bookend your day on that
yeah,
is one of the most impactful things that I've done. And I've seen it even elevate specifically over the last couple months from some big changes that were going on there. So I think that was amazing. Um, Carrie, you're fucking awesome. I get so much
thank
from
you.
connecting with you so much. And I'm so pumped about the tour and Her-dentity and stuff. I know the next one is in Phoenix. So I guess the
Yes.
last question I'll kind of close this out is What could women expect from coming to the Her-dentity tour?
Okay. Initially, I'm going to say what you're not going to be prepared for is the safety that you're going to feel in the environment. Safety is you're going to feel safe. But I can absolutely guarantee you your life will change.
Yeah.
It will be the best personal development experience of your life. I can attest to it. If you show up, even if you show up completely closed off, I'm going to get to you. And I'm going to like, there was one woman in Montreal, she was like all like this. By like halfway through the first day, she's crying. She's like, "What did you do to me?" Like, I'm good at what I do.
Yeah.
I can read a room. It doesn't matter how you show up, you will leave changed.
Mhm.
I guarantee it.
Love it. Carrie, thank you. I'm so grateful to you for not just all the work that you're doing here, but everything that you've helped me with over the years and learning from you. So really appreciate you taking the time today.
Of course, thank you so much.
Absolutely. If people want to check more of what you're doing out, they want to maybe check out the tour. What's the best place that they can go and they can see what's up?
Yeah, so the best place you can pop over to Instagram because that's the best thing that I can give you right now without giving you all the details. Carrie underscore Campbell underscore UWP, and the link for Her-dentity is right there in the bio. Because I have no idea what my link is off the top of my head. Or Facebook, Instagram or Facebook. Like honestly, just message me. I respond to everything.
Yeah.
I respond to everything myself.
Yeah.
So just hit me up there.
Love it. Perfect. All right, Carrie, till next time. I'm sure this will not be the last. So, listeners, thank you so much. Go follow Carrie. Check it out. I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, peace. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars, the deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait. Go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.